Dark academia is an aesthetic slash subculture slash lifestyle that I really love for how much it encourages people to romanticize the mundane aspects of their life, romanticize reading, and romanticize the process of learning itself. And I just think it encourages people to be more passionate about the things they love. And I just really love the fashion aesthetic as well. I think it looks really cool. And even though I'm not really espousing the dark academic aesthetic right now, once we actually go back to physical school, I'm really excited to like bust out some tweed blazers and like some plaid pants, maybe at the same time, who knows. But yeah, I have just been reading a ton of dark academic novels, and while I do think that books as a monolith, kind of all just like the act of reading is dark academic, some books are like dark academic themselves in that they are set at a school, or they just like fit the vibe of dark academia. And so today I just wanted to review a bunch of books that I think you would like if you're into the aesthetic. I didn't love all of these books, but I could see them working for certain people who are looking for certain things. If we're having a conversation about dark academic novels, I have to start off the conversation with The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I think is the blueprint for all dark academic novels. It's the original, it's the one that started it all, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's kind of like the gold standard for dark academic novels, and it's the book that all books kind of get compared to. And I would basically describe this novel as Dead Poets Society, but if Robin Williams' character was not a good person and kind of a shifty character and really kind of had questionable morals. And so the novel is about this group of classics majors at this small, very idyllic liberal arts college on the East Coast. It's a very small, insular cast of characters, and as the novel progresses, they get more and more morally ambiguous until they kind of cross the line. And the atmosphere and tension in this novel is just incredible. It's not a whodunit, it's kind of a whydunit. And I think Donna Tartt's writing is just so strong and her prose is so beautiful. The plot in this novel really is quite slow, and Tartt takes her time sort of developing each character in the book and exploring the characters' interrelationships with each other. And I think it really pays off in the end. And I mean, The Secret History is just a great book. Definitely, if you're interested in dark academic books, you've got to start with The Secret History, because I think it was so influential on this. Even though dark academia is not like an official genre, I do think that it was very influential on the other books that would come after it that are similar. And so yeah, I highly recommend The Secret History if you're interested in dark academia at all. And so if you've read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, you kind of know what I was talking about with The Secret History kind of being the blueprint for dark academic novels, because If We Were Villains is kind of like the spiritual successor to Donna Tartt's The Secret History. It's another whodunit set at a conservatory on the East Coast, and it follows this group of fourth-year drama students, and again, it's a very small cast of characters. I think there's only 5 of them. It's about these students getting lost in their coursework and kind of the small group dynamics and the sort of tight-knittedness, but also how tight-knittedness can produce a lot of tension within small groups. And when that tension comes to a head, the characters have to grapple with the outcome. The book starts off with the main character Oliver in jail, so you kind of already know that this story is going to have a tragic ending, and the book kind of goes back and forth between Oliver in jail and sort of the past tense flashback story of what actually happened. I enjoyed the whodunit aspect of this story. I don't think it was quite as strong as The Secret History, but I still enjoyed it. And I have to say, I wasn't a huge fan of all the Shakespeare quotes. Like I said, it's about a bunch of drama students, and so they're putting on different Shakespeare plays, and while they're putting on the plays, the author kind of puts in block quotes from the play that they're doing. Like, I think they do Caesar and then Romeo and Juliet and a bunch of different ones. And honestly, I was not a huge fan of reading those block quotes. I feel like Shakespeare is like really dense to get through. And when I started reading the book, I was like, I didn't sign up to read Shakespeare. And so I'm just not much of a thespian, but if you do enjoy theater and you do enjoy Shakespeare, I think you'll really love this book. And so the next book I wanted to talk about was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. And Oscar Wilde is a really big dark academic figure, and this book has huge Oscar Wilde vibes. It's basically about the son of an aristocrat, and he, along with his best friend and his sister, are going on a tour of the continent, basically Europe. Personally, just being stuck at home, it was really fun reading about a bunch of characters traveling Europe and going to a bunch of places that I had never been before. And it is historical fiction, by the way. So it's set in the 1700s, and it's just a really great story where I kind of didn't know where the plot was taking me, and I was just in it for the ride, and I really enjoyed it. The main character has a very quirky, witty dialogue, and he's very spoiled and not very likable in the beginning. I think he becomes a more sympathetic character as time goes on, and there's a lot of yearning and pining in this story, and the representation is great, and the resolution of this novel is a very optimistic, very happy ending, if I can spoil that. And yeah, if you're kind of looking for something dark academic but not super dark, I would highly recommend The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and it's just a really fun kind of summer read. Recently I read Maureen Johnson's Truly Devious, which is the first in a series which I'm not sure I will be continuing on because I didn't really enjoy this novel a whole lot, but I also recognize that I am not in the sort of age demographic for this book. It is YA and it's set at a high school, which is probably why I had a hard time relating to the characters and was just not super interested in it. But I did want to include it because I know that some people prefer YA, or they are like literally in high school, so they might prefer a story set in high school. And so the book is about this high school called Ellingham Academy, which was founded in the 1930s by this very wealthy man. And so basically one day his wife and daughter are kidnapped, and a student at Ellingham Academy is also murdered. Eventually the case goes cold, and no one ever finds out who did the murders or why they even occurred in the first place. Back in the present day, the main character of the book, Stevie, comes to Ellingham Academy with the goal of solving the crime and figuring out what actually happened. I think that this book would have been a lot better if the author had just stayed in the present day. She keeps going back and forth between the 1930s and the present day. And because it is a cold case, I think the author does this to give it a sense of urgency. But I also think that the author could have done that with just one narrative and not going back and forth. And because of the back and forth between the 1930s and the present day narratives, I feel like the novel never has a consistent tone, and the pacing is really weird and kind of off. And yeah, I just think that if the novel had just been set in the present day and if we had learned kind of through Stevie, the main character, what happened back in the 1930s, it would have just been a better novel. The high school drama, I was not a huge fan of. I feel like it was just kind of trite to sit through and read, but again, I'm an adult reading about high schoolers, so that's probably why I feel that way. And yeah, I think it's again a fun summer read, and even though I am curious about what happens next, I'm not sure I'm going to be investing the time to read the other two books just because I was not a huge fan of this first one, but I don't think it was terrible by any means, and I would recommend it and sort of give it a few chapters and see what you think of it before buying it. And yeah, if you're kind of searching for a book that's dark academic and fantasy, I would recommend that you read The Magicians by Lev Grossman. Now, this book is not for everyone, and unlike The Secret History or If We Were Villains, the author doesn't really make any strides to make the main characters likable, and so when they're doing like questionable stuff, it's kind of hard to sympathize with them. But also I do think that characters don't have to be likable in order for a book to be good. And I did enjoy the first book of the Magician's trilogy. I read the second book and it was really bad, so I would recommend that you just read the first book, and the first book is kind of the most dark academic of the trio anyway. The story is about Quentin. He's accepted into this magic school where he can basically go to learn magic and get a bachelor's degree in magic. The Magicians is often described as kind of a grown-up version of Harry Potter, and I think that's a great way to describe it, and it's kind of literally what the author, I think, was trying to achieve. The Magicians is definitely not a perfect book by any means, but it definitely does have that sort of passion for learning. Quentin is really passionate about learning magic, and it kind of becomes an obsession for him, and I think that aspect of this book is very dark academic. I also think the series does a good job of dealing with mental health. Quentin, when he discovers break bills and discovers that magic is real, he thinks that it's going to kind of cure him of his depression, but he ends up finding out that magic isn't the answer to all of his problems, and I think that's a very sort of poignant theme, and I really enjoyed that about these books. I will also recommend the TV show, which may be controversial opinion. I think the TV show is better than the books, especially seasons 2 and 3 of The Magicians. It's just really good TV. It's not like, you know, Breaking Bad or like Game of Thrones level TV, but it is very entertaining, and I think the characters are a lot more likable in the TV show. So if you have a hard time grappling with how thorny the characters are in the book, you might enjoy the TV show a bit more. Another book I wanted to mention, which is not strictly speaking dark academic, but I do think it fits within the aesthetic, is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. So this one doesn't take place at a school. It doesn't really take place anywhere academic, but I just think that if you like dark academia, you'll definitely like this book, just because the vibe is so weird and the concept is so absurd. It kind of fits in with the idea of like being really passionate about something. And in this case, the main character of My Year of Rest and Relaxation is really passionate about sleeping. This book is just about a woman who decides that she wants to sleep for a year. In order to do that, she kind of enlists the help of this psychiatrist who is super shady and basically prescribes her a bunch of different drugs that she can use to go to sleep. It's a very existential novel and absurd and really darkly humorous, and definitely one of the best books I've read this year, and I'm really excited to get into more of Ottessa Moshfegh's other work. I think some of her other books are even more weird than this book, so I'm kind of intrigued and a little scared of what her other books are gonna be like, but I do recommend My Year of Rest and Relaxation if you're into dark academia. Even though, like I said, it's not super academic, I do think it kind of fits the overall weird, offbeat vibe of the aesthetic. And so the last book I wanted to talk about is My Dark Vanessa, which is a very dark academic novel, and of all the books that I mentioned today, I think is probably the most dark academic of these, and so huge content warning for this book. It's basically about a relationship between a teacher and a student. It was a really uncomfortable book to read, but I do think it was an important book to read. It's basically a retelling of Lolita from the perspective of Lolita herself, and it's about taking back agency from abusers and telling the story of survivors of abuse instead of kind of telling the story from the perspective of the perpetrators. And one of the themes that is touched on in My Dark Vanessa is the sort of onus placed on victims to come forward with their story and kind of give all the harrowing details of their abuse to the public, which can also be very traumatic in and of itself. And so having this fictionalized story, I think, is really good because you can sort of use it as a conversation starter and use it as an example without someone real having to come forward with the details of their trauma, and I think that's very important, and in that regard I can really appreciate this book. And I think if you're not uncomfortable while reading this book, you should probably go to therapy or something, but I do recommend this book. But again, huge content warning. And so yeah, that is a really quick sort of rundown of a bunch of different dark academic novels that I read and enjoyed to varying degrees this past summer. And actually I didn't read The Magicians and The Secret History this past summer, but I wanted to include them. And if you have read any of the books and you have any opinions on them, or you disagree with something that I said in this video, I would love to know what you think of these books. If you did enjoy this video, please click like and subscribe. I'm almost at 50 subscribers and I'm super excited. Thank you so much to everyone for being here, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Take care.